I learned a lot today.
My name is Fr Magnus. I'm the Norwegian rector in London and here in the Norwegian church in London.
Tell me everything you know about Norway. Oh.
And of course, the Norwegian Church Abroad is an independent part of the Church of Norway. And we are linked to the Church of Norway via the Bishop of Bergen, who is our visiting bishop. So she is very proud of the Norwegian Church Abroad then, because in my diocese we would never have sunsets, as she said, because it's globally.
Grieg, you know. Do. Yes. Anything else? The service the other day was in Norwegian. Are they always in Norwegian?
Yes, absolutely. So, of course, that's our core mission, that we serve Norwegians abroad in Norwegian.
That, that Scream guy, Edvard Munch. Yeah, Edvard Munch. Anyone not called Edvard? Hans Christian Andersen, he's from Denmark. Alfred Nobel, Sweden. ABBA, Sweden. Anna Fried from ABBA. Yes, she is from Norway. Well, don't forget the Vikings. And so how long has there been a church here or hereabouts?
You can go over here and we can see the pictures here.
Oh, great.
Of our predecessors then, because we have been here since the medieval age, since our patron saint, St. Olaf, he was visiting in England. If you know the riddle, London Bridge is falling down, that's the work of our Norwegian king, Olav, before he became king. But he was a hired soldier for the Anglo...
No. You're going to have to tell... Okay, hang on. So you're telling me, you're saying that King Olav...
Yes, King Olav II, yes, our patron saint.
Okay, so you're going to need to tell me a bit about King Olav anyway.
Yeah.
But specifically you're saying he made up the rhyme London Bridge is falling down?
Yeah, the London Bridge is falling down. That riddle is about him, his job, because he was the one, his forces was the one that took down the bridge on behalf of the Anglo-Saxon king against the Danes. He did it to cover the Anglo-Saxons, so it wasn't, for once, he was a Viking of course, and he did a lot of mayhem, bad things, but for once that riddle is about him defending the Anglo-Saxons against his Danish neighbors, because the Danish was the strong ones then at that age.
Yes.
So this was approximately then 2015, 14, just around when he became a Christian then. So he was baptized in Rotherhithe in 2016, but then of course he became our patron saint because he tried to regain the power in Norway. It was a lot of back and forth. And it was at the same time as he tried to have control regally, of course, of Norway. He was also the one introducing through several processes Christianity to Norway. So when he fell on the Battle of Stiklestad in 1030, that is our 1066. After that, we reckon Norway as a developing Christian nation, part of Europe, the Christian Europe. And he became a very popular saint in the medieval Europe. And in London, you have, during the 11th, 12th, and 13th century, you had 5 and 6 parish churches in the city named after St. Olaf. The last one was on this side of the river, just beside the present London Bridge. Not Southern Cathedral, it was the neighbour church. But because when you come out of London Bridge now, you can face an Art Deco building that's called St. Olaf's House.
Yes.
And that's the place where the church were. And the spire of the church were pulled down and was, I think, someone told me yesterday, it has been made a fountain somewhere in the...
I'm guessing this is King Olaf.
This is Olav II, our patron saint.
Okay. No.
And of course, there you have that Saint Olav. Saint Olav was our patron saint. But he was so tired after a battle, so he went to sleep and he forbade anyone to wake him up. And then during the night, his son was born. His secretary, or what you should call him, said that we have to wake the king because the kid is sick and we have to baptize him. And of course, we have to give him a name. No, we can't wake the king because he will get furious. So then I take the responsibility, the secretary said then. So what should we call him then? We call him Magnus, after Karla Magnus, as a Charlemagne. Charles the Great, you know. The French Charles the Great.
Yes.
And that's that's just the suffix of his, the Great. Magnus is the Latin for the Great, of course. Karla Magnus, as a Charles the Great. So we just call him the Great because he's the firstborn son. He's the great one. And then when the king wake up, he became furious because why didn't anyone wake me up?
Yeah, I didn't mean
I've got a son. He has been named and he has been baptized without my knowledge. And then his secretary said, well then, king, you can kill me because if you kill me, and your son had died, at least 2 people would have gone to heaven.
Did the child survive?
The child survived, so
Okay, yeah.
he is in the, and so he is Magnus the First.
Okay.
And he fought the Danish king, and he died fairly young then. But he was, for some reason, he's been called the Magnus the Good in the royal list then. So, but he died young then. I only think he was 25 or something. Yeah. But then his uncle, as the little brother of Olav, our patron saint, he was the founder of Oslo, our capital.
Yes.
And he was called Harald too then. So, and he was called Harald Hardrade, also the heavy one, also the heavyweight. And he was a general in the imperial guard in Constantinople. And he gained a lot of wealth then. So he brought with him an enormous amount of wealth to Norway, and he had a Russian queen then and everything. And he had ambitions to take England then. So he was the one that were unfortunately then taken down by Harold Godwinson in 1066.
Yes.
And then Harold Godwinson, just after that, just celebrating that victory, fell by us. And then William the Conqueror came and took him then. So of course, so Harald was the last effort from Norway then
He softened up Harold.
Yes,
So,
yes.
yeah.
So you had 2 Harolds then clashing, and then there you got that story. So that was the last Norwegian.
The last invasion.
The last Viking and the last.
Yeah.
They were all Christians then, but they were still rather brutal. So Harald is a very proud name, but then you have had several Håkon, and Håkon the Fourth. He was very important because he was the king when Norway were at its peak. You know, we called it the Norwegian Empire then. Then Norway governed, Norway, and we had the Orkneys, the Shetland Islands, Faroe Island, Iceland, Greenland, Isle of Man, parts of Ireland. So we had a huge kind of semi-small empire then. That was our peak of power then.
Yes.
So of course he has been very important than Håkon the Fourth. The last Håkon, that's why he is important. The second last Håkon, Håkon the Fifth, he was the last king of the direct male line then of Norwegian kings. So after him then you got daughters, and then marrying into the Swedes, and then you got all the mess, and then you had the Black Death, and then Norway went down the drain.
Did it go down the drain?
The Black Death hit hard in Norway because we are such, we were small, and
Yes.
and of course England, Denmark, and Sweden have a huge amount of agricultural area.
Yeah.
We have mountains and fisheries and things.
And
so of course,
so everyone lives
we
together
don't-
and everyone catches
Yes, and we
them.
don't
Yeah.
have that kind of. We didn't have. We really broke our back then, because the Norwegian population were more than. It was reduced with more than half.
Oh, that's
And
much
then,
more than
yes,
than
and then
England,
of course
yeah.
we didn't have the structure. We didn't have the structure to maintain an independent state, and the Denmark, of course, and Sweden. We were in a union with all 3 countries, but then Sweden was strong enough to just get out of that in time for the Gustav Vasa, which is the equivalent of Henry VIII, then establishing a Swedish state and a Swedish church and everything Swedish, and then Norway just became a part of Denmark.
It's a genuine delight because this is not taught in our schools.
No.
The history
And
of Norway.
of course,
is not
if you
taught.
know, and the fascinating us to be a little serious also regarding current events. Scandinavia was the bloodiest corner of Europe for 500 years because every Swedish king and every Danish king had one ambition, and that was to conquer the neighbor. So you had bloody wars over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Back and forth and back and forth. And when you see the way, and of course southern Sweden now was mainland Denmark up to the 16th century. But when finally the Swedes took it, the whole maritime areas, the Easter Sea and the sea between Norway and Denmark and Sweden, that was Danish. So of course it was a part of Denmark. But then after the final wars then that made the present borders, the sea were the border. So that's a very unnatural thing, when you go before the 16th century. And of course the way the Swedes worked then, just like the Danish did the other way, it was we are so close. Compare now, to be serious, compare now with the Russian-Ukraine war,
Yes.
That's the bloodiest wars when you are so close in culture and everything is so similar. But it's absolutely abhorrent. So the ethnic cleansing by the Swedes, especially by the Swedes, but also by the Danes, was terrible. But we were all white, Lutheran, Scandinavian.
Same language or similar language?
Very similar languages.
Yes,
So
yeah.
of course, but distinctly different, but similar.
Yeah.
And this went on up to 1814 then. So after Napoleon for some reason, then everything cooled down. So, of course, in 1905, that was the last one when we had real tension between Norway and Sweden. And in the way we went out of the Union, of course, that provoked the Swedes enormously, because they have a quite high self-image and they didn't want to get loose of Norway in that way. They wanted to have it more mutual, but they accepted things then because they want to cool things down. So of course, except for that, Scandinavia has become the absolutely most peaceful corner of Europe.
I know,
then,
it's so...
for 200 years.
Yeah.
And that's a miracle.
As we enter the so-called 400-year night of Norway's history, come back next week where we bring things right up to the present day and see the continued extraordinary ties between Norway and the United Kingdom personified by this beautiful church.